welcome. My name is Betty Renata, and I am the Chapter Development Manager for Smart Kids with Learning Disabilities. For those of you who may not be that familiar with our organization, Smart Kids is a national nonprofit that is designed to empower parents of children with learning disabilities and ADHD. We've been doing this now for 17 years. Just last fall, we launched our 4th chapter here in Connecticut, the Northern Fairfield County chapter, and we're very pleased to be finishing our season, our first season, with a panel of young people that will share, of course, what it's like to live with learning disabilities and ADHD. In sharing their experiences, we hope that you can gain some kind of insight and or find some comfort in hearing their stories. At the center of our panel is a young lady, Ashley Raymond, who had come to us, our organization, a number of months ago with her idea for her Gold Award service project. It was Ashley who had asked us to sponsor her program and her project. And of course, knowing and hearing more about her program, it was a no-brainer because it fits so well with our organization's mission to educate, guide, and inspire parents of children with learning disabilities and ADHD. Ashley has organized tonight's program. She gathered and collected the panelists that will be talking with you, and she put together questions. And those questions I will be moderating after she gives a brief summary of her project and a little bit of information about learning disabilities. Afterwards, we'll get into our questions, and I will be opening it up to your questions, because I know part of why you're here tonight is not only to hear their stories, but also have your own questions answered. So with that, I will turn it over to Ashley.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be here and to be able to share some of my experiences with you all. I'm dyslexic, and I truly believe that this is a really important topic that needs to be addressed and spoken more freely about. Before we start, I want to say thank you to Smart Kids, and especially Betty, who has been so helpful in aiding me through this Gold Award. So thank you. I actually came up with this idea after attending a Smart Kids meeting with my mom a couple of years ago. Because a parent had asked a question that one of the guest speakers kind of didn't know the answer to. And it's the type of question that there is no yes or no answer, but it's more about experiences and like different individual kids and stuff like that. And the question was, should I tell my kid that they're dyslexic? And if I should, then how? And some of the parents kind of tried to jump in and give some of their own advice and like what they did and stuff like that, but overall, it still felt like the question was kind of unanswered and was missing something. So the entire time I was thinking, well, I have an answer to that from my experience, but I didn't actually share it because I didn't think anyone would want to hear from a kid. And so after that, I told my mom, I was like what I was thinking, and she was like, are you kidding me? You're the person they'd want to hear from the most, because everyone that's there was there to try and understand what their kids are going through and to help them through it. So that's when I realized that, I had a special insight to answer the questions that a lot of people want to know the answer to. So when I decided to do my Girl Scout Gold Award, I already had an entire project idea kind of planned out. And so I knew that I wanted to get a panel of kids together that have learning disabilities to try to talk and answer the questions that others really want to know the answer to. So, for my Girl Scout Gold Award, a Girl Scout Gold Award is a Take Action project. It is the highest award that a Girl Scout can achieve. For my project, I wanted to educate people on dyslexia, and I wanted to do that so that we could create an understanding of learning disabilities and dyslexia in general. I kind of did extend my project to more than just dyslexia and to all types of learning disabilities. And I wanted to do this so that I could hopefully increase the empathy of other people towards students that have learning disabilities. So, one of the requirements of a Gold Award project is that it is a global issue. And dyslexia and learning disabilities are definitely a global issue because there are troubling misconceptions about the causes of learning disabilities and their definitions. There is emotional ramifications of having a learning disability, and there is a real-life impact a learning disability can have on one's life. So, some troubling misconceptions are that 22% of people believe that learning disabilities are caused by watching too much TV. 31% of people believe that it is caused by a poor diet. 55% of people believe an LD is the result of home environment. 51% of people believe that an LD is caused by laziness. And 70% of people link LDs with intellectual inabilities and autism. This is not true. A learning disability is neurological and it's something you're born with. So, to clear that up, a learning disability, the definition of a learning disability is a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes involved in understanding or in using language, spoken or written. The disorder may show itself in the imperfect ability to listen, think, speak, read, write, spell, or do mathematical calculations. It is neurological, and it is not the result of an intellectual inability, emotional disturbance, or environmental, cultural, or economic disadvantage. And this is the definition from the Individuals with Disability Educational Act. So, as well as the misconceptions about learning disabilities, there is an emotional impact of having a learning disability. And people with LD can have difficulties with reading social cues and interpreting conversation, which can create difficulty with friendships. Anxiety and fear of reading, writing, language activities, math, and school itself can occur. Anger and frustration is very common in students with learning disabilities, and then avoidance in activities that are difficult, which is just natural. Negative self-image and feelings of inferiority, which can lead to depression. So, the real-life impact of having an LD, when I was doing some research, I came across this infographic, and I just thought it was crazy, kind of, about the locked potential and the unlocked potential of having a learning disability. This specific graph is with dyslexia, but I think it can kind of apply to other types of learning disabilities, which is 35% of students with dyslexia fail to graduate from high school. 50% of youth in the juvenile detention system are dyslexic. 60% of adolescents in drug and alcohol rehabilitation are dyslexic. But for unlocked potential, 35% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic, 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic, and 50% of NASA employees are dyslexic. So the reason that we're all here is how can we help people with learning disabilities? And so there are some really important coping mechanisms, such as encouraging support systems like family, friends, and teachers, involvement in helping others, the presence of a passion or interest or talent that can provide a boost in self-esteem is really important, and we can talk about that later on in the panel, and enhancing problem-solving abilities. And that is kind of, when you have an LD, obviously problem-solving is going to have to be something that you're comfortable with, but everyone can always use extra strategies that can help learn. stuff. Okay, so this is my we're excited, so that's where I got my information. If anyone has any questions after the panel, I can give resources if you want. But yeah, so I wanted to end with a quote of "My ability is stronger than my disability," because I just thought it was really powerful and cool and true. So thank you.
So I'm going to ask each of the panelists, of course Ashley's given a little bit about herself, but we're going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, a little bit about your age, your grade, background, and of course your disability. So you want to start, Ashley?
Sure. I'm Ashley. I am 16. I am currently homeschooled, but I've been to public and private school. I'm dyslexic, and yeah. I'm Tori Ingley, and I'm 13 years old. I've been to public and private school. I'm now attending Worcester School in Danbury, and I am in 8th grade, and I have dyslexia and ADHD.
My name is Tristan. I'm in 8th grade, about to turn 14. I have gone to public schools and non-public schools, and that's about it.
I'm Michael. I'm no longer in school. I'm 25. Back, just to give some context, back in 2009, I was Smart Kids Youth Achievement Award winner, and now I'm on Smart Kids board. So I have ADHD.
So I think we've got a real great spectrum. So clearly, I know a lot of parents in the room have kids who are just going off to college, might be interested in some questions, of course, for Michael. But to start it off, what we're going to do is I'll ask a specific question and ask each of the panelists to answer it, and then we'll look to the audience to see if you want to have any more clarifying questions about it. I want to start with something that Ashley had brought up, which is one of the reasons that spurred her gold project itself, and that was the question about when did you find out that you had a learning disability? How did your parents approach you about it? And how did that go? So if, maybe we want to start with Tori. And
Okay.
go from there.
I felt like I always knew because my mom is a speech language pathologist, so she was in this field of learning disabilities, and I was diagnosed in around 2nd grade, so I don't remember specifically a time where they sat me down and told me specifically, but I felt like I always knew, and it wasn't very hard for me. I felt like I didn't understand when I was younger, and now that I've progressed and I had outside teachings from outside of school, that definitely helped my learning disabilities. But I never thought that there was a certain amount of, like a certain specific time where someone sat me down and told me about my learning disabilities. I felt that I just always knew. So.
Do they need the, can you hear, okay. Have to be playing past the microphone. Sorry about that, didn't realize. So do you want to just say that whole thing? Did everybody in the audience, I don't know, Marco, did you catch? Okay, we're good. Okay, the pressure's off. Okay, move on to, yeah.
Well, I don't really remember the time I was told. I kind of always knew, and I kind of always knew I was different from everyone. Maybe sometimes bad, maybe sometimes good, but it's always been a struggle for me, and I've not overcome it, but I've learned how to live with it and adapt to it.
I also can't really recall a specific moment, since I did have parents who were pretty proactive. I mean, I guess it was very evident, and I was diagnosed in 2nd grade, though it didn't really become evident to me that what it actually meant until it was, okay, now you're in resource room, and I was not into that, and I pushed against it for every single turn it could have happened, so it really probably took a few years until it became something that I even kind of acknowledged within myself, and then again, continual pushback against it up until through college probably.
I actually do remember when I was told, like the others, I always knew that I had difficulty reading compared to other kids, but I was actually told by someone in 9th grade, the summer between 8th and 9th grade. So that's actually pretty late compared to everybody else, but yeah.
Did any of you find or feel like if there was a benefit to learning maybe early on versus later on? Did you feel like you struggled or you kind of were suffering for a period of time until you found out, or? I don't know if anybody.
Is it okay if I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually do think I would have liked to know earlier, probably, because I had always gone around telling people like, oh, I have trouble reading, so if I'm reading this slowly, that's like I have trouble reading. But other kids like to go like, oh, me too, because people think that having trouble reading and not liking to read are the same thing, and it's not. I love to read. So I kind of wish I had known a little bit earlier.
It was very helpful for me to learn earlier, like right after I found out that I had so many outside classes and things that I had to do. So I knew that I wasn't very good at reading and it was hard for me, but I was also at the point where I wasn't really understanding what was happening and like what a disability really was. But I think that it was definitely helpful for me to overcome it when I was younger than for me to figure out now and then have to power through that my entire life knowing that I was different and didn't know why. So.
I found it very helpful to know that I had dyslexia because teachers would call me slow at reading and stuff. And so I know that that's not true because I had dyslexia, and it's not just because I'm slow at reading. It's because it's more difficult for me to understand what it means. So it was very beneficial to always know that it wasn't because I didn't want to read or I didn't like to read. It's because it was very, I had dyslexia, so it was very challenging to read.
I think in some ways it didn't really matter too much for me because I again continued to push back based on just sort of wanting to be like quote unquote normal, but it definitely was beneficial in terms of how my teachers treated me, in terms of if I was just sort of daydreaming and staring out the window, their reaction was much less aggressive. And it was definitely something that, since it was better communicated to people, it didn't sort of make me feel as terrible because I wasn't being treated in a way that really wasn't helpful to my education.
Can I just say, I think the person that had asked the question at the panel like a couple of years ago, the reason she had explained that the reason why she wasn't sure if she should tell her kid that they're dyslexic, she explained that the reason why was because she didn't want to put a bar, that like she felt she didn't want to limit the kid in thinking like, oh, you're dyslexic so you're not going to be as good. She didn't want to do that. But I don't think I don't think that telling someone that they're dyslexic puts a bar, or have any learning disability, puts a bar for them. I think that it helps you kind of identify yourself as like there's other people that are going through this and it's okay, and that you're not alone, which sounds really cheesy, but like I don't think it's a bar, like a limitation of having a learning disability.
Very well said. I think the one slide you had, which I had mentioned to you, the juxtaposition of the unlocked potential versus the potential. I've never seen those statistics placed next to each other quite like that, but I think the bar is, there is no bar in terms of, it's what matters is making sure that their parents and the people who surround them give them the tools they need to be successful. So I realized we only have one microphone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well then, I'm not going to, unless I feel like running into the audience. Maybe what we'll do is, if you have some questions, does anybody have any specific follow-up questions to that initial go-around? If not, we'll just keep going, and then we can open it up, and then I can run around with the microphone all at once. Okay, one of the, you bring up a number of other things in terms of the emotional side of having a learning disability. So in some respects, you always felt like heard consistent. I knew I was different. I felt different. What did that feel like when you were among friends, among others? Did you feel that really just you shined, like you had a neon light, that you were different, or just what was that sensation? If you want to start with
I don't, whichever you want.
Okay. I was really young, so I don't really remember me, like, compared to my friends. But I did know that I'd always try to, a lot of people would just read really fast. Like, my friends would go and, like, take a chapter book home, and then they'd be finished with the entire series when they came back, and they're just like, how do you do that? It takes me a year to read a book. So, but I usually try to keep it like a secret, and I didn't want a lot of people to know. But I didn't think that and we were just so young, like they knew it wasn't like a big thing for them, and it wasn't necessarily a big thing for me until I got older and I started understanding. But I didn't think that it was like a lot of people could tell. I thought that how fast they read and how much like I didn't really understand definitely was obvious for me, but not obvious for other people.
Well, I was lucky enough to have one of my friends to also be dyslexic, but it's kind of sad that only 2 kids were diagnosed out of my whole grade of 72 kids or something. Only 2 were diagnosed, which is pretty bad. So we always went to like the research room, and it was like we were always picked out of the crowd and stuff. But I tried to act normal, and when I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, I was reading at like a kindergarten level. I literally couldn't read, so I had a really hard time with that. But at least someone there also was feeling the same way.
The one thing I can really specifically remember in Wisconsin is I didn't want to like go to my friend's house after school and do homework with them. That was not something I was interested in, just because I did not want to compare myself to them. I kind of wanted to stay away from that. And definitely, again, like in school, it was kind of weird, the feeling of like getting picked out in the classroom to go down to resource room. It did kind of feel like, you got the looks, and it was like, oh, what's wrong with them? And so that was a little isolating in a way. So it definitely kind of made me feel like I wasn't necessarily on the same academic bar as my friends, which was not that fun.
There was one thing that was kind of traumatizing for me as a kid, which is there was stickers that they liked to put. Everyone got a little bookcase that they could put the books in that they were reading, and there were stickers that were on your little bookcase. There was red, yellow, and green. And if you had a red sticker, you could only read the books that had a red sticker on it in the library. If you had a yellow sticker, you could read the yellow and the red. And if you had a green sticker, you could read anything in the entire library. And of course, I always had a red sticker. And it's very open, and it's very like everybody knows what reading level you are. So that, I did not like being a red sticker. I did not like that. But another thing is I used to also kind of just try to hide it. I remember I couldn't actually really read until I would say 6th grade. I learned to memorize the shapes of words, and so I could kind of fake my way through it, but I couldn't actually really sound out the words and stuff like that, even though I had been working on it with people my entire life. And so I would sit and I would pretend to read in a corner, and when there was reading time, I would pretend to read. The other thing that we talked about once was there's those reading logs that you do where they tell you to read 30 pages or something like that. And you have to have a parent sign off that you read these 30 pages, or that you read for 30 minutes or something like that. And kids used to, be like, oh, I only have my 30 minutes of reading, or my 30 pages to read today, left for homework at 8 o'clock or something. And I'd be like, that would take me 3 hours to read 30 pages, because it was kind of the type of thing where you were supposed to read 30 minutes, but they wanted you to read a certain amount of pages. So they had linked 30 minutes to 30 pages, which is not the case for a lot of people, I would think. But yeah, that was always hard.
So, clearly for a number of you, the reading was definitely a struggle in school. Could you give us another example of some of the things from an academic standpoint that you struggle with right now? And of course, this doesn't apply to you, Michael. Although maybe in life and work, maybe there's something you still struggle with from having either ADHD or learning disability.
Sure, if you want me to. I don't mind. We can switch off.
Okay, I'll go first. I'll give you a break.
Okay.
What was the question?
So the other part was, is there, go, does anyone?
I was going to ask.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I know the answer. Okay. No, the question was, give me, besides reading, is there another area of academics that you struggle with, that you struggle with currently in school? And this does not apply to Michael, but he can answer in terms of work. So.
Yes. Math is very hard for me now. Reading has gotten a lot better now for me, and I feel much more comfortable reading. There's still some of that initial panic if there's a timed thing, like the SATs. I recently had to take the SATs this year, and I had a little bit of a panicked moment when I realized that you had to read that the section was only 45 minutes or something like that, and there was 16 passages that you had to go through, and that was a little bit stressful. But math now I think would be the most difficult thing that I struggle in, because the sequencing gets mixed up in my mind a little bit when the order of events and stuff like that.
I also agree that math is really hard. I'm not very good at math, but I always have to pay attention really, really hard in math class. I'll write everything down in certain pens. I have to make sure that I have everything written down, so I'll know afterwards. I might not even use them, but I just to make sure that I understand what's going on. I have to write everything down so it goes through my head and I know what's happening. And some people would just be playing around with their spinners or whatever on the other side of the classroom, and I'm just gonna be I have to pay attention. If not, I won't know what to do. So yeah, math is pretty interesting.
To be quite frank with you, I don't really struggle with anything right now. Math is pretty easy, science is easy, ELA is a little bit harder, but the main thing I struggle with is social studies. There's a lot of memorizing, and that is not my strong suit.
Well, I guess still in terms of even at work, time management is definitely a struggle for me still. I'm sure it is for a lot of people. But just being able to sort of properly manage my time and not get lost in something and being able to sort of, retrace myself and come back to focus. I have, an app on my phone that can like buzz every 25 minutes just in case, I lose focus and I go off and I'm reading something or I'm diving too deep into something that I don't need to spending time on. So that was definitely something from my academics that has carried over, and it's with me, and it's just something, that I'm still managing to try to improve on.
In working with Michael now for the last couple of years of the benefit, and he was the first one here, besides Ashley. So something's working right. He's managing his time. And with that, I kind of want to dovetail into, clearly Michael has some strategies that he's employed to help him cope and be on time and manage his work. What would you say is like one of the biggest strategies that you've employed to help you academically?
I think writing everything down is really helpful for me. Remembering everything is always hard. I'm not like, maybe I'm not very responsible, but people will we used to get planners. Everyone always had a planner in 6th grade. Like you had to have your planner, and everyone had the same one, and it was all you had, like write down your homework and all those things. And then then they got rid of, they scrapped that like next year, and they just said no need for giving everyone planners, and just and so people would be like, I don't need a planner. That's too easy. Like I don't need that. And I'm just like, are you crazy? I have to write everything down, and I'm like, a planner is like I need every day. So I think writing everything down for me is pretty easy. So it helps.
Well, I kind of think the best thing to do for like getting out in the mornings to go to school is definitely set up like an alarm system where you have like an alarm that tells you you should be done with breakfast, you should be done with that, and then done with brushing teeth, stuff like that. And so with the planners, I kind of find planners to be silly because I'll write everything down in them, but once I get back to my house, I won't check them. That's like, I need something to remind me to look at my planner.
I'm probably the same way in terms of a planner. Luckily, there's phones and things like this now where it can really just pop in your face, which I definitely employ a lot. But I think the one thing that I still really use, even going back to school, and I still use it now even if I'm reading leisurely, is I make sure to turn through every single page in the chapter I plan on reading and trying to identify different places where I would want to take a break or where it's a good spot to take a break, and basically have a whole idea of, even if it's a book I want to read and I'm excited to read it, I want to know, okay, when are the good spots for me to sort of have a closing thought, and like I can sit down and like put the book down, go get a glass of water, and then come back to it instead of just jumping into it.
I'm with Tori. I write down everything. I plan everything so that I like to have a checklist that I can just check things off when I finish them. But as for strategies for work, I'm currently taking classes at NCC. Well, not currently, it's summer now. But I am taking classes at NCC, which is, yeah. And so there's some work that needs to get done in a timely manner, and I have study buddies, so that's very helpful. If you have a friend that is in some of your classes or something like that, or even if your parent is if you have a parent that's home and you're I would suggest doing work with somebody where if you have a question on what a sentence means or something like that, you can ask someone that you're comfortable with, hey, what does this mean? Also, if you're if you ever really need to read a book in a timely manner, have someone read it to you. I'm 16 years old and I still have my mom read me books at night sometimes, but they're not picture books, they're books that I need to read for school. And so I'm more along the lines of like with the coping mechanisms that I went over. I ask for help all the time. I make friends with my teachers and I go for extra help like with them. If they always have office hours and I go talk with my teachers because I'm the type of person, everybody learns differently and I learn more through talking than anything else. Some people learn through writing. I'm not sure if you're one of those people, but it sounds kind of like it. Some people learn like differently. I learn through talking, so if there's someone that you can talk to about like just where like what you think is going on, that is really helpful for me.
A lot of times these children have extreme strengths that go along with some of their learning challenges. What, if you would say, what is your favorite class in school? And what do you feel like you have a specific thing that you're really good at?
Sure. Because I can. I don't want you to. I don't want to bring this. It's okay. Definitely not. I think it's history. I had a new history teacher this year, and he's amazing. He's so good. I had a few new teachers, and I was really excited to have these classes. They're all discussion based, and like you'll have to read a certain paragraph, and then like you'll spend the rest of the class talking about it. And I feel that connecting those things together, like even if it's not like truly, you can do with outside events or things that you feel. I think for discussion based, like I'm being more open minded, I guess, to what I'm learning, and like being able to talk about it. I think that's pretty nice. I like doing that. So.
I don't know if you can really count this as an academic subject, but my favorite subject would be art. I really excel in that, and I usually go in for extra help to go in there and just kind of, it's like a relaxing place to just kind of sketch, draw, and it's just really comfortable for me, and it feels, I don't know, natural, I guess.
I really enjoyed math, and especially when it got on to sort of the more advanced levels of statistics or calculus, because to me it just felt like I was putting together a puzzle. When I'm moving all these different letters and numbers around in combination, it felt like a really cool project of putting different pieces together, and that definitely helped me. Like I went on and I got an economics degree, so that sort of was definitely in tangent with what I enjoyed growing up, so that's definitely something that I think is, that way of looking at things like a puzzle was definitely very helpful to me.
My favorite academic class is, ironically, English, but specifically English composition, so writing. I took an English composition class last semester and I absolutely loved it because it was discussion based, and I think teachers can make and break a class for you as well. I don't think it's always necessarily just a subject. Teachers really can impact your entire opinion on a subject. My favorite non-academic class or just activity is acting. I love acting. I do a lot of theater, musical theater, and I really love that and feel comfortable when I'm on a stage.
Very well to this point. So. One thing that seems to be we see it too much in our society. I know I've talked to a number of heads of school, and one of the biggest things they seem to be dealing with their student population is anxiety. And in your experience, do you feel like that you suffer from any kind of anxiety? I know, Tristan, you mentioned that you enjoyed art because it's kind of like a stress relief. Are there things that you find stressful throughout your day, and then what are the things that you have found that help you cope with that?
Once again, ironically, reading, but reading for fun, not like school readings. When someone tells you that you have to read a certain amount by like the end of the week, it's no longer fun. Because then that's really stressful. So that produces anxiety for me. But then to read Harry Potter is my all-time favorite series. But to read something that relaxes me a lot, like a book that you're really into, that you really understand the world, like a fictional book, as well as acting, like I already said. But yeah.
I have to agree. It took me a while to like start reading books. Like I would like read a few chapters like a month, and then I would wait like another month, and then I'd read another chapter. So it would take me like an entire year to finish a book. But I mean, she had her series, and mine's Percy Jackson, and it's just, I feel like the comfort of another world, even though it's not real, is so wonderful. And like people like being able to create something that you're so passionate about, I find that to be really cool. And I'm also an equestrian, so I feel like riding my horses or being with them is really like it's calming. So I feel that that's pretty great too. So.
I'm usually really stressed out. So it's always kind of hard for me when like a test is coming up and you haven't studied and then it comes around and then blah blah blah. It's just awful and it really stresses you out. But if you can find some way to like kind of relax yourself, maybe just going home, sitting on the couch or something, relax for an hour or something. I don't know. It's nice. And I also like drawing a lot. It brings me to peace. And just kind of gets me away.
Well, I definitely still struggle with certain things in terms of like time management. Like there's still constant times where I just forget to call my mom back about something, like if we're having dinner at some time over the weekend. And that definitely causes some anxiety for me in terms of being able to remember like, oh darn, I was supposed to call my mom, and then she's sending me texts and now I'm in trouble. So those sort of things, I do enjoy sort of checking those little things off my checklist. Like it's sort of trying to switch it to a positive narrative where it's like, okay, I get these little things done, and it's sort of like a good feeling. But I still also do enjoy just jumping into a book, or also I have a weird thing lately where I'm also a big geography nerd, and I've been taking a lot of weird quizzes online, like identify the country and the shape and the size of it. So I've been playing a lot of, online quizzes, just as a sort of like step back from everything for the day. But I definitely still struggle with different sort of like time management sort of things and, work-life balance that I'm sure everyone can relate to. And that sort of, being able to have it as little things that I can check off. Definitely is a better way to frame it that makes me feel good about it.
I want to jump into an area that I know as parents, many times we're in the business of looking at accommodations for our children who do have learning disabilities. And obviously at some point we need to pass the baton and make our children aware that they are the keepers of these accommodations, that they're going to have to self-advocate. To what extent, I know some of you are not in that situation, but those who are, maybe you can recall, what kind of accommodations are you aware of that are in place for you? And do you feel like you have what you need to know to self-advocate?
Sure. So, question again?
Okay, are you aware of specific accommodations that you get for your learning disability? And yes, to what extent do you know that?
My school is very, it's for the kids, and it's always for the kids, and they need help. So there's this thing called AES. I forget what it stands for. I think it's like Academic Enrichment Service or something. It's like you have like 2 periods and then you have like 20 minutes where you can go to any teacher you want for any like questions you have, and they're always open and free to what you want, like need help with. And for like, especially for math, you can go for like practice problems and things. And I never really do, but I always have extra time if I need it because of my disabilities. And I know that's always there if I do need to take it. So yeah, there's always extra time and help there. So I don't always use it, but I mean, I try to, and I do it when I need to. So.
So our school kind of calls it the IEP year, I'm pretty sure. So I don't know what it stands for, but I helped make mine. I know all the things on it. It would take a very long time to list them all out. But I think I get like double time, and I get tests read if I need to. I get the computer if I want to type on it, and I get spelling waived, which is very helpful.
I had time and a half in like a separate testing room all throughout middle school and high school, and I kind of used that, especially if I just wanted to get up and take a walk, which I would frequently do. And that was pretty annoying to test proctors and hole monitors, but I was aware that it was something that I was entitled to and that, you know, I was supposed to receive, so I definitely took advantage to, okay, I don't feel like looking at this question right now, I'm going to go up and go to the water fountain. And that sort of was something that I continued even through until college, where it was, you know, okay, you have all these really awesome materials and the ability to sort of scan my textbook and have it be read to me. You have these technologies, I'm entitled to them, I'm going to use them. And even again, the separate testing room, college professors were really annoyed by it. But it's something I knew that like would benefit me, so I didn't mind making a small inconvenience for them.
I'm on a different schedule than you guys are because I'm homeschooled. So like I make my own schedule, and obviously I take classes at places that like my classes are during a certain time. But I do have the ability to go in, and teachers do have office hours, and so definitely take advantage of teachers that have office hours. But also just, I've learned that a learning disability isn't necessarily an excuse, but it's kind of an explanation. So like, I have to be responsible for getting my work done. And even if that takes longer, I have a learning disability, so that's an explanation as to why it takes longer, but it's not an excuse to not get my work done, and I've really come to realize that. And that I can't put things off that are difficult for me just because it's not fair that it's harder for me than it is for other people. And I have to take I've learned that I have to take responsibility for that, and to realize that it is harder for me, so I should work on it sooner rather than later.
I think all of us hope that we can raise our kids to be like Michael, who really understood. Sounds like you understood you have rights and what you needed, and was able to self-advocate. I know these kids are a little younger, but I think that might be the goal, because at some point you're going to be in college and you're going to need that extra time, or you're going to need to know how you need to manage. And with that, I want to ask another question, and then we can open it up to some of the parents and students in the audience. But what would you say is your number one? What's the number one advantage to you in terms of what skill do you feel like you have that helps you manage with your learning disability? You know, what kind of mindset do you have to have?
I think I've learned to think outside of the box. So if one thing doesn't work, I have to try another. And they're not always the most conventional ideas, but like I've learned to really just think of ways that will help me memorize things. So I have an example. I once had to memorize a map with the states in it, and the placements. So the quiz would be that they handed us an empty map and we had to put the states in it. And so I came up with a song of the states. It was the original, like the 13 colonies, yes. So and then I had to, and like when I practiced singing the song, I would point to it, and that's how I learned it. And that's not something that most people kind of think of in the beginning, but I knew that I needed some way to learn it, so that's like one thing that I did. So thinking outside the box is definitely something.
I think problem solving. Things don't always work out, and there's always another way to fix it. And it might not be easy, but I feel that I'm like a work perfectionist. Like I'm not a regular, like a perfectionist. Like I need everything to be perfect, but I feel that I always have to get it done, and it always needs to be done. So I feel that like when it's not done, that freaks me out. But I feel that problem solving and be able to do something, I don't know. I think that it helps, because like when a teacher's like doors locked, like they're having a meeting when you're supposed to talk to them about something and you have a question, you should go to someone else that you know that's in your class that's really good at what you need help with, and go to them. Or when it's like FaceTiming for a long time trying to do your work, even though you might just be sitting there and doing your work when the other person's doing their work. When you always have a question, you can always ask them. And so I feel that problem solving in order to get what you need, I think that is great. And so yeah.
To kind of go off what you said, I'm kind of a mixture of both. I think outside the box and problem solving. Problem solving is like a big part of my life. Like if one thing doesn't work, I just learned a way not how to do it. And so there's always a way of it working. And you should always like kind of put yourself in somebody else's shoes and kind of like put yourself in that situation. And that will give you like very good problem solving skills and communication. That's what I've just learned over the years. It's very helpful.
I think sort of having ADHD growing up and having my mind run in every different direction at once sort of gave me the ability to sort of figure out how to bring all those different directions together and link things in different ways, and that definitely has sort of helped me in my work now, where I have different components of computer science and graphic design and statistics all running together throughout a single project. So being able to sort of connect the dots on all sorts of different things, because my mind was going in so many different directions to begin with, definitely kind of was a really strong asset that has really helped me greatly.
It's probably for Michael, just because you have the most experience. And I'm wondering, what's something you wish that your parents had done when you were in high school or as a teenager that you now recognize would have probably helped out a lot?
Well, I really can't have too many critiques of them. I think they did a really good job. So I think one thing that would have really been beneficial for me would be sort of, and again, I don't know if this is something that they really even could have done, is sort of like talking to other parents and of my friends, and just sort of getting an idea of, you know, this is what he has going on. It's different, but it's normal. It's fine. Just because I really didn't feel like my peers and my peers' parents sort of had a grasp of things, and they probably were in that 51% who thought of it as some fault of my own. And so I don't know if that connection would have really been possible, since older generations, that stigma probably is more present just because the education and the advocacy wasn't there. They didn't have smart kids. So that would have been great, but I don't really know if it even would have been capable.
Do you feel like do you feel like your parents sometimes intercede with other parents in terms of explaining to other parents? Because I know I was one of those obnoxious parents that would be like, let me just tell you about my kid, and just so whatever, no surprises. Do you feel like that's the kind of support you got from your parents, or maybe annoyance? I don't know.
My parents kind of supported me all the way through, and they've done as much as they can, not just because they're here and they don't but they've done everything they could have, and if they did any more, it kind of would have been annoying and excessive. And so, they always told the teacher, and I've always gotten my rights out of the law system and everything. So I mean, they've done pretty much humanly possible for me. Especially my mother, she helps me so much whenever I need it.
My parents are here too, so.
I won't get a bias.
But no, I think that they did a great job. But it's not just because you guys are here, but I can't really imagine it to be any other way that's better. Because usually when I tell people, they're kind of surprised, and they wouldn't really expect that, which I kind of find a little flattering. But I mean, I don't know. I think that all of the extra things that I had to do after school, they may have been far away, and they may have been hard for me as a kid, and I hated it so much. But I mean, I didn't know that it was going to help me so significantly until now. And even though it was horrible doing all of those things outside of school every day for who knows how long, but I think that it really, really helped, and they had my back. So
yeah. If there's one thing I wish my parents could have done differently, is I wish they didn't worry quite as much. But parents worry, and honestly, I got all the help that I needed because my mom worried so much. So, I think it's important that there's a balance, and that even though we all everyone wants to help, parents want to help their kid as much as they possibly can, just know that everything that you do is received, and that we do appreciate it at the end of the day. Thanks, Mom.
So, I'm not quite sure what my question is. It's kind of multifaceted. I'm in a situation where, I don't know if any of you have been in a situation where two parents don't agree, and one's in denial and one's fighting for the child, and then there's a child who cannot advocate for herself. And then also a child who's extremely bright and isn't really struggling in school, but is struggling outside, organized. And so the school doesn't see it as something that they need to do something about. So, like I say, I'm really not sure what my question is. It's so multifaceted. There's so many different levels of it. So, I'm not sure if it should be directed to you or anyone else or what, but
I think it's number one, I don't think parents like to think that there's anything wrong with their kid. And I mean, I say wrong, a learning disability isn't wrong, it's just the way it is. But no parent wants to think that. So that can be, there's a little bit of a denial stage, I think, that people can have. That I know one of my parents, I think, had a little bit. But I think the most important thing to do in this situation is to keep the conversation open. That's what really helped me, is like my mom was always like fine, like was always good talking about it with me, even if it wasn't like explaining what dyslexia is, but just kind of like explaining. We used to like have conversations of like, how did you know that I was dyslexic? And she'd be like, well, you know, there was times that like, you know, well, my mom's also a learning specialist, so that helps for sure. Just there, keeping the conversation open and being like, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a learning disability, but it's different, and that's okay. So I think just talking about it all the time is good. And now my dad also, like, I think, still doesn't necessarily want to call it dyslexia, but he acknowledges that, like, yes, I've had trouble with reading, and that is okay, and that I'm comfortable talking about it. I think the reason why there is denial is because parents don't want to put anything onto a student of like, they don't want you to ever think that they think that you can't do something. So as long, like, I think talking about it is really the most important thing for sure.
I think one of the biggest things in our society, one of the statistics, and I always point to this one, 7 out of 10 people, including educators, parents, confuse learning disabilities with that of intellectual disabilities. So it's no surprise that we have a huge stigma in this country as to, you know, these are your Steve Jobs, these are your, you know, these are your, as she said, 35% of our entrepreneurs are in this camp. They have learning disabilities. So
I'm actually dyslexic and ADHD myself too, and so is my daughter. And I'm so impressed by you guys to be able to talk about it and own it. I probably didn't until I was in college at NYU, and I got myself buried first, and then I had to go to work and explain myself and fix it for myself. But my question is, my daughter has had me, so she didn't have any, she was able to identify and say, okay, I'm gonna be okay because my mom's okay. But when did you get involved self-advocating for yourself with teachers and going to IEP meetings or being involved?
So I really started to get advocate for myself kind of like past 5th grade. I went to Washington, D.C. to pass a law about it, how kids should be tested at kindergarten. And so we passed it, and so it's going around the country right now, being passed, I guess. And so I really advocated for myself because I know it's like I have those rights, and I have a right to either have more time, get spelling waived, and things like that. Like one time my teacher was like, it was like an element quiz, and so I didn't know how to spell some things, so I spelled them slightly wrong, and she didn't give me the points, because I'm like, I kind of have spelling waived, and she's like, well, that wasn't close enough to the thing. I'm like, but I have spelling waived. And so we had this whole dispute. I ended up getting them right, because they were. And one of them were wrong, and I said that to her, like, this one's wrong, but the other ones are right. So, I mean, I ended up getting a 90 on that for self-advocating.
I didn't really advocate for myself when I was in elementary school, I guess, because I didn't really know what that was, but I don't know if it's like becoming a teenager, having more of an attitude or something, or having more of like standing your ground, but I definitely feel, not defensive, but I feel that if there is like a teacher or something, that I feel that like I can like stand up or say that like, no, like I might not do it to their face, but like I'll always think like, oh, okay, that's not, yeah, what he was saying, I didn't pass the law or anything cool like that, but I definitely, I noticed that when I was little, I never really did that, and now I don't not always do it to their face or to them specifically, but I definitely do to myself, and I notice it. And sometimes I do go to the extra mile and start talking to them about it, and then we'll fix it from there. So.
My mom is a learning specialist, like I said before, so I've kind of grown up with around the ideas of learning disabilities and just different types of ways of learning. And I mean, this is probably my moment for advocating for it, but I've kind of learned that I was never ashamed of it, and I think that's really the first step is I missed that of trying to hide it. I mean, I tried to hide it in elementary school, but I didn't know exactly what it was, because I wasn't I didn't know throw around the term dyslexia until 9th grade, because I wasn't diagnosed until then. But I think if you're not ashamed of it, and if you're taught from the reactions of others that there is nothing to be ashamed of, then it's really easy to kind of stand up for yourself and be no, I have the rights, I have the same rights as everybody else. So.
I can also kind of piggyback on the question even, and sort of the initial idea of I definitely was not where they are at their age, and this is only a 10-year gap, so I'm also really impressed. But I sort of had an inconsistent way of advocating for myself. It would always kind of be, okay, I'm okay with having these accommodations and getting what I deserve in middle school, but when I get to high school, I want to be normal. I don't want to go to resource room anymore. I don't want to do this. And then, it's okay, I'm okay with this in high school, but when I get to college, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to do something else. I don't need this. And then, you end up going to a school where I had, a 1,000-seat lecture for chemistry, and I didn't have any of the materials or any of the resources I need, and I ended up transferring, and that was sort of the moment where it was okay, I need to do this for me, and I need to be active and advocate for myself, and that was also sort of, the real sort of starting point where it was okay, this is who I am, this is what it is, and that's great. So I definitely can almost feel a generational gap in a way, and I'm extremely impressed that, they're thinking a little further ahead than I was.
I just want to add maybe 1 or 2 more things about being proud of dyslexia. Ever since 4th grade, my mom taught me to be proud of it, and how it's not you're different or you're weird, it's just that you're special. But it's more you just learn differently, and you're just maybe just, I'm not going to say better, but you have different traits than everybody else. And so ever since I've always been telling people from 4th grade oh, I have dyslexia and stuff like that, because I was always proud of having it. And so one day I was talking to someone, and I'm oh yeah, I have dyslexia. And so the person's oh yeah, I know what that is. And they give me this thing about my diet. I'm excuse me? And so I started saying, no, that's not it, and started to explain it, so I can thank my mom for giving me the trait of sass.
Each of you had talked about feeling different, being aware from an early age that you just didn't do things the way other kids did. Did you have challenges in school with your peers and other kids, interacting with them and having them, were you bullied or teased, and how did you deal with that? How did that affect your self-esteem?
So in the middle year of 5th grade, I believe, I started to get a little bit depressed, because it was kind of sad for me knowing that I'll never be the same as someone, and I'm not very smart, even though it's not true. But so then I kind of went to a spiraling depression and I skipped half the year. And then I went to a private school and it got worse there. And so kids even bullied me even more, calling me names and stuff, calling me gay. I'm not saying anything's wrong with me. And so people just kind of bullied me really badly there, and it was pretty much hell for me. It's an hour-away drive every day there, and then I have to come home at 5 o'clock and then drive for an hour. So I got home at like 6 at night. And that's if I was lucky, if I didn't hit the traffic. And so it's been like a hellish nightmare in 6th grade and 5th grade. And so I started going to my mom's school, and it turned out great. Faculty brat, it's nice. I get some benefits, but it's really just kind of nice to know that I'm wanted.
I never really had any problems with anything social. Didn't really know what was going on. So, I mean, like, there was that one commercial with Bella Thorne saying, like, what she thought dyslexia was, like, mixing up letters, and how they say the words would jumble around. And I'm like, I don't have that. Like, but my parents would say, like, oh, yeah, you do. And I'm like, but then I always thought that it was different, and I never really knew exactly what was going on until I actually came here and, like, know, like, that they had similar things that were going on. But I never really had any problems socially. So, yeah.
I'm kind of similar. Socially, I think I've always been very outspoken personally. So I think the reason why I didn't have difficulty socially is because, and this is gonna sound really weird, but I never like let that happen. If anyone ever tried to say something, I was very quick to retaliate. So it's not that kids don't try to say stuff of like, oh, like scoffing under your breath when you're reading out loud and you miss a word or something like that, and like the laughs and stuff like that, and that happened, and that hurts. But it's kind of something that I learned that like they don't understand, so it's not my problem, it's their problem. That's kind of like the mindset that I had, like when because teachers do make you read out loud a lot of the time, and that was when I experienced the most like social difference, is like when I had to read out loud and the kids would giggle when I missed a word. But I was always very kind of outspoken, so that I think did help me. But yeah.
So, I guess what I meant by social is I never really felt bullied by it, but I did when, like, we had a CCD class where you have to read, like you'd always have to pick a paragraph in that, and so you there'd be a certain amount of kids that would have to read, like you read that paragraph, you read that paragraph, you read that paragraph. So like I would know from the order, and I would like count like the paragraphs and start reading my paragraph like before. Oh my gosh! I would like, but then also the problem about that is you wouldn't hear what was happening before.
Yeah.
I tried doing that, but it doesn't really work. But I also got really nervous when people would start to like, they wouldn't do anything, but I started like getting a little freaked out. Like I have to read, and I always read slowly, so I try to like get it over with. And I also like, this happened recently. Someone tried to tell me what my disability was and what it really was, and then I said that's not true. It's like this, and then they said no, and then I got really, really annoyed with them, and then I started yelling like, you don't know what you're talking about, I have it, you don't. So it's not that they were necessarily mean, but I felt that it was just, in my mind, like like what they would think. It's not that they thought that, but it was what I thought they would think was what freaked me out the most.
So, I mean, I've even kind of been bullied by teachers. We went into like this dark room for resource, like with all these computer things that were like bleeping and stuff, but it was for kids who didn't know like any English whatsoever. So I was just in there, maybe one of my friends or two, And so I remember specifically one time I was sitting with them, like talking. Teacher goes with her other teacher like into the corner. It's like, these kids are retarded and stuff, like starting like bad mouthing us and stuff. And so I've never really forgotten that, and it like always kind of reminds me of what people like can do with their words.
So just sort of being the smallest kid in my grade, with no attention span and really weak reading skills. I got picked on a lot, and it led to a lot of fights. In 3rd grade, I actually kind of like started a gang of friends to go around and beat up my bullies. That's probably not the most healthy reaction. I can still, remember exactly where everything is placed in the principal's office because of that. So that was sort of a more explicit way. And then it became sort of more implicit when I got to high school. And it was, I'm taking honors classes and I'm taking advanced placement classes. And everyone else kind of thinks that, I'm kind of getting a handicap and getting a leg up by having time and a half. And it's like, it's almost equated to with like cheating in a way. So that was definitely kind of disappointing, where it kind of felt like, they thought I wasn't, properly earning it and that I had an advantage over other people, which is a pretty weird way to look at a learning disability. So that was something where I kind of had to just learn how to cope with it and forget sort of what people were thinking about it. And that definitely was helped by my parents and certain teachers. And then also, a few friends who would sort of start to get it eventually. But that was definitely kind of a matter of, perseverance and sort of coming to kind of grips with, okay, I'm different. I'm not cheating because, I like to get up and walk around and take breaks from a test.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for everything. This has been really terrific. So my question is, my daughter's going into high school next year, and she has a lot of processing, difficulties. So she has dyslexia as well as many other things. So when learning is overwhelming, how do you know what you need to help you?
I mean, what I'm planning to do next year, I'm also going to high school next year, and I'm extremely worried because the grades actually matter now. I'm planning just to get completely rid of my phone and any technology that'll distract me from getting in my schoolwork. So I'm planning to either keep it locked up or something, downstairs in the basement or something, I don't know. And so I'm planning just not to use it until all my work's done and all my scheduling's done. And I'm planning to have some type of schedule in my room of what I need to do and what's coming up next. And just kind of getting alarms on, getting help from tutors, and just, I don't really know. I'm not in high school yet, but I'm going to.
I would say the biggest thing that any LD student needs, the most important thing, is time, because that's really, we can get the work done. We're fully capable of doing it just like everybody else, but we need a little bit extra time. So the time management, I think, is the most important thing. That if you can manage your time and come up with a schedule of your own, it's not as big of a difference as it seems like it is. From middle school to high school, I think that okay, that's a little bit hypocritical of me to say because I'm homeschooled, but but I have talked, I'm friends with, most of my friends go to school, and I do, it's not that big of a deal. So if you just kind of take everything step by step, don't think of one trick that I've learned for me is like, don't think of all the work that you need to do for all of your classes. Think of one class at a time. So get all of your homework done for like English first. And a lot of people like to say like easy things for last, but get the easy work done first so that you don't have to worry about it anymore. So just get what you can done and then ask for help on the rest.
When it's for your kid, like, what do they need? I really feel that they need to be open-minded and just remind them that they need to be open-minded, because if not, they don't know. Like, I might have difficulties with something, but I'm not sure if I will need help. So I feel that they just need to be completely open and just like tell everyone everything. And it's not that you could be the judge of what they need, but I feel that if the person themselves isn't not capable, but isn't wanting to step forward and tell what they need and even think about what they need, then that's really important. It's not like their responsibility, but it definitely helps to figure out what they have to do, because they need to think about what they need, and that it's okay to need something. So.
I think for me, like the idea of structure and sort of time management and scheduling was really helpful, but also staying active was definitely beneficial. So I didn't come home right after school and then I had, just 6 hours before bed that was kind of unstructured and I could just do whatever I want. But the idea of like doing an after school program or having something that can sort of engage you in different ways definitely sort of, one helped sort of work with the attention deficit and the hyperactivity, where it was like, okay, I got to go run around for a few hours, so now I can sit down and focus and do homework. But it also kind of was able to give me mental breaks from sort of more strenuous academic work, but it was also structured and scheduled in a way that allowed me to be able to have it that it was a set time and that and then after a certain amount of time I was going to go back and get back to my work.
Well, I want to thank the panel. I think your maturity, your insight has been amazing, very impressive, as always. And I want to thank everyone for coming. And our organization is here for parents who need help and who still have more questions about what they can do to assist their children. So I want to thank everyone and have a great evening. If you're interested in signing up for a newsletter or a chapter, please do so. Thank you.